All right, guys, this video is all about why you should stop toning. The first thing I'd like to talk to you about is what people mean when they say to me, I want to tone up, but I don't want to bulk up. So they'll, point to their tricep or the bicep or something like that and explain to me that they want to be able to see the definition of the muscle, but they don't want it to look huge. So basically what they're telling me is that they want to drop the fat off the top of the muscle and they want to stimulate the muscle, but they don't want it to get massive. When I was a young man, I was taught that high repetition with light weight would tone your muscle, exactly what we were just talking about there. And then what I was also taught was that if you wanted that bulk, if you wanted that size, that you would lift heavy weight a few amount of times. Okay, that is not true. That myth has been debunked. There's a little bit of truth in there, but for the most part, this is a myth, and I will do my best to back up what I'm saying here. You are either working that muscle or you are not, period. So in order for you, the audience, to believe me, I'd like to cite some research articles. In order to understand the articles, need to define a couple things because a lot of these research articles don't have like a little vocabulary section where they define terms. So 1RM is the first thing that I would like to define. 1RM stands for 1 repetition maximum. I'm going to use the bicep curl as an example because it's easy to explain in this video, but also you, the viewer, can go find your 1RM with this exercise fairly safely. You have to be able to complete the exercise through full range of motion. So the elbow needs to be all the way straightened out and then all the way curled for it to count as a repetition. For me, my 1RM bicep curl is 50 pounds. So you grab the 50 pound and you curl it from the bottom to the top. That's 1 rep. As you go to try to do the second one, if you only get through some of the range of motion but can't complete the full range of motion, then that's perfect. That's your 1RM. If you can complete it multiple times, this is not your 1RM. You need to go get a heavier weight. If you can't complete it a single time through full range of motion, you need to get a lighter weight. So that's 1RM. The second thing that I would like to define is how most of these research papers look at strength. And so they break it into 3 categories. You have strength, hypertrophy, and power. All of these are objective measures, and in science it's important to be objective versus subjective. So you want to be able to take this group of athletes and make sure that you're using objective measures versus them just saying, oh, I feel tired or I feel like my muscle has been worked. Strength is simply, can you lift 10 pounds or can you lift 20 pounds? So that's pretty easy to objectively measure. Hypertrophy is the diameter of the muscle. So you put a tape measure around the bicep, the quadricep, whatever you're looking at, and measure the diameter of it. That's hypertrophy. And then power is measured with velocity. And there are little devices that you can put on a weight, a barbell, etc., and it will measure how quickly that barbell or weight moves. Or you can even put it on your wrist just to measure how fast your hand moves. So slow is not very powerful, very fast. That's a powerful lift. Okay, so we defined 1RM in the 3 ways that most of these research papers that I'm about to cite will look at it. One more thing to define, what they define as heavy, medium, and lightweight using percentages of the 1RM. So in your heavy group, generally speaking, and I just appreciate that I'm going to cite a few articles out today, but there are tons of articles out there, and they all are roughly talking the same language here. Okay, so heavy, 85% of your 1RM to 100% to the 1RM. Your medium group is more like 65% to 85%. And then your lightweight group is 65% or less. But please appreciate it's not 65% to zero, it's 65% to around 50%. Okay, so let's talk some specific numbers just for an example. So using my bicep curl of a 1RM at 50 pounds, the heavy group then would be from 42.5 pounds all the way up to 50. The medium group would be from 32.5 pounds to 42.5 pounds. And then the light group would be from 32 pounds and less, but not to zero, 32 pounds to about 25 pounds. Notice there's no 3-pound weight in that light group. So when they looked at these studies, they did ask the athletes to go to failure. And remember, failure is the inability to complete the exercise through full range of motion. So you try to get the bicep curl, but you just can't quite, and that's failure. So that's an objective measure. All right, here's the here's the kicker. So when they took these three groups, the medium, the heavy, and the light, and they took people to failure, they found that every single group improved in all three categories. So all three groups got better with the size of the muscle, bigger. All three groups got more powerful, quicker, and all three groups could move more weight. And that's your strength, 10 or 20 pounds. That leaves a big question for a lot of you, I think, and that is, well, what about the 3-pound weight? What about the 5-pound weight? I see a lot of athletes grab a little 3 to 5 pound weights, especially like in a spin class, and do 100, 200 of these, of these, of these. So what are you feeling when you feel that burn in your muscle? And isn't that strengthening? It is not strengthening. You are not actually changing the muscle, to the best of my knowledge, as far as many research papers as I've ever read. What you're feeling is lactic acid. Lactic acid is a signal for our body to let us know that we're in a state of fatigue. It should not be confused with stimulating the muscle for strength. So I'm going to give you a little better example of that. So without any weight at all, just start flapping your arms. Flap, 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 flap. How many can you do? 100, 200, 300, 400, who knows? Here's the kicker. Let's say you're on your 400th rep. You're on fire. Your shoulders are burning. But I say, I will give you $1 million if you can do one more rep. I bet you can. And then if I said $1 more million, now up to $2 million if you can do one more rep, I bet you can. And so how long does that go on? Well, the point of the story is we haven't reached failure. And so maybe that's why these research papers aren't doing this, is because it's too subjective. The athlete, if they can push through pain, can continue to perform this repetition. It's building up lactic acid, but the muscle hasn't truly failed, which leads me to my point of why I think we should stop toning. You're not taking the muscle to failure, so you're not getting the muscle stronger. You're just building up a ton of lactic acid. I don't have a problem with building up lactic acid, but as someone who's a physical therapist assistant for over a decade, I will tell you I have a problem with repetitive stress. So a runner is a great example of this, and I'm not against running. Let me give you a little window into what we need to do for our runners to avoid excessive amounts of injuries. If we appreciate that an activity is performed thousands of times, and you would be doing that if you're doing 300 of these, 300 of these, 300 of these, 3 times a week. As the body goes through so many repetitions, it does get at least irritated. Maybe not damaged, but it gets irritated. And so we're dealing with this repetitive stress situation. So for our runners, what we have to do is change their tempo. It's a 6-minute mile one day and it's a 7-minute mile the other day. It's a hill one day and it's a flat land the next day. It's running clockwise around the track, counterclockwise around the track, small variability so that they don't land on the exact same spot on their foot and their knee and their hip going through the exact same range of motion and load, because if it's identical every time over and over, eventually something will get irritated. And that's what I believe what we're dealing with when we look at continuing to do what a lot of people know as toning. Furthermore, strength is awesome. Strength is really cool. So let's just go over some of the advantages of strength. Number one, let's all be self-honest and be vain for just a moment. Most of the people that want to tone want to see that muscle shred that fat. I'm here to tell you that my average person that I work with, and I work with a lot of different people, everything from the professional athlete to just someone who is, working a 9 to 5. I will tell you that with the huge, vast amount of people that I work with, that when you lift these heavier weights, you will actually see exactly what you want. You're gonna get that muscle showing and you're gonna be ripping through the fat. When our body is under stress, we actually improve the cardio right then and there. And so what I mean by that, when I wear my heart rate monitor on my chest and I do heavy squats, and this would be in the heavy group because I'm in the 3 to 5 reps with these, my heart rate spikes to about 165 to 175. Now, if I'm in the medium group, and once again, please appreciate what that is. This isn't medium to what you think is medium, which is what so many people do. This is medium based off of a 1RM. When I'm in my medium group, I can get more like 5 to 8 reps, and my heart rate does pick up, but not as much as it does when I lift heavy. As the weight goes down, the stress to my system goes down, and so I'm not actually elevating my heart rate as much as I'd like. I'm not saying that if you do Flappy Bird forever that your heart rate won't elevate. It will. It's just that we can do better. Another thing that's really cool about strength is the other advantages that we're getting, such as improved tendon tolerance. So tendons tend to respond well to heavy loads. You can look that up if you want. The acronym is HSR. It stands for heavy, slow resistance, and it has really good findings on improving the tendon tolerance. What I mean by tendon tolerance, like you're hiking downhill and you have some knee pain right where the patella tendon attaches to the knee, right there, right? Or if you're a tennis player and you got some pain kind of on the outside of the elbow or the inside of the elbow, that's where the tendon attaches to the muscle. And so by loading it heavy, it actually helps remodel the tendon. And then there's bone density. Bones are responding to a heavy stimulus. If you load up, our bone feels that load and it improves bone density. If we don't ever load up, we can actually start losing bone density. And I think we're all familiar with that. We all know that as we age, we start to lose a little bit of our bone density, but not everybody knows that this can be slowed down and even improved a little bit if you load up. So there's a lot of advantages to strengthening. Another thing to look at is life. So specificity is this thing that you get better at what you practice. So if your goal in life isn't playing with the kids, it's not gardening, it's not playing tennis, it's not skiing. If your goal in life is that you wish you could do Flappy Bird really good, then keep doing that because you will get better at that. You will be able to do from 300 to 400 reps and from 400 to 500 reps because you will build a tolerance to that lactic acid and you can keep going for more reps. But when people hire me, most of the time, they're hiring me under a couple different premises, I suppose, if I think about it. One is looks. They just want to look better. And once again, I think if you lift a little heavier, you're going to get exactly what you want. The second one is dysfunction. As a physical therapist assistant, people will come to me because their shoulder doesn't go all the way up or it hurts when it does. So we usually do identify some muscular imbalances, a weakness at some point that needs to be getting stronger. And we just talked about how if you lift too light, you won't actually be getting stronger at all. And then the other thing is just kind of looking at the exact goal or activity of that person. So you want to get the canoe on top of the Subaru. This is not 500 Flappy Birds. This is a motion, maybe two, a little adjust, right? Or you want to ski and you'd like to go from right when the lift opens at 7 a.m. to at least lunch. So you're trying to ski for at least 4 hours. So that's a little bit more of the endurance. But the endurance that we're looking for is a muscular endurance, not just a lactic acid endurance, because you're hitting those bumps and that body weight's coming down. So you do need to be strong for that. Plus those darn tendons again. You don't want that knee pain to come back. You want to garden. You want to be out there for a while. It's a lot of bending over, standing up. So practice what you want to get better at. Your exercises should somewhat resemble what you want to get better at. For skiers, we do squats. For gardeners, we do RDLs or deadlifts. We're not doing Flappy Bird unless people want to get better at Flappy Bird. Okay, so let's talk about the people that do get bulky. concurrent cardio is your friend. Look at the long distance runner, the long distance biker, an endurance athlete. Most of them, or at least the ones that I work with, know that they should be strengthening in addition to their sport. And yes, they are lifting the heavier weights, not one repetition necessarily, but somewhere around 3 to 5 reps, maybe 5 to 8 reps. And that means that that weight should be appropriate, meaning that they can't do 20, the weight's heavy enough to just be in that kind of 5 to 8 rep range. So they're lifting heavy and they're not getting bulky. How's that possible? Well, concurrent cardio is the key for them. They perform the longer distance runs or bikes or whatever, and the body actually taps in to some of that muscle, meaning the body draws from the muscle. Muscle has more nutrients than fat, especially when we burn through our fat reserves. So if you get bulky and you don't want to get bulky, instead of just stop getting strong, what I would recommend is try to throw in some cardio, looking for the longer distance, 30 minutes plus, really more like an hour, honestly, to tap into some of that muscle. Okay, let's recap. So for the most part, if you want to look good, I recommend lifting no lighter than 65% of your 1RM, and I recommend that you take that to failure so that you can get the benefits that you want. That's not actually my preferred way to work out, nor is it my preferred way to work out with my average client. I usually give a mixture of the medium to heavy in my programming. So they will have some weight in their hand that is quite heavy, and they will perform anywhere between 1 to 5 repetitions of this. And then I do go with the medium group as well. So I will have a little bit lighter weight. Remember, that's around 65 to 85% of their 1RM. And I will have them do more reps, like 10 to 12. This way, we're stimulating bone growth. We're really getting that muscle to look good, ripping through some calories by increasing the cardio component while exercising, as well as the following day, metabolism boosted to repair muscle. And I'm reducing the repetitive stress, and I'm also improving bone density and tendon tolerance. So many reasons, and the list could go on why you want to actually lift a decent amount of weight. And then for the select few that do get bulky despite what they're doing, personally wouldn't recommend the toning approach. I don't want you to go through a bunch of repetitive motions in your joints so that hopefully I can decrease some stress to them. And I also want you to be time efficient, so hopefully you don't have to spend hours doing 3 sets of 400, but you probably do want to get some concurrent cardio going. And during that cardio, maybe a spin class, if you want to grab the 3s, that's fine. Just always remember the specific goals, right? Remember that the exercise that you perform, you will get better at that. And you'll notice in some of the research that I posted today, they show just that. The 1RM group gets better at 1RMs, whereas the 5RM group gets better at 5RMs, and then of course the higher gets better at the higher. So we can build what we want to build. But how many times in life do you find yourself going, man, I just wish I could lift this cooler up and down 400 times, and oh, by the way, the cooler is crazy light. That's a rare experience in my view. So I hope today helped. I hope you have a little better understanding of what toning is, but even more importantly, honestly, I hope that most people feel like they have a little bit better command of the situation. I hope that they are at least curious about lifting a little heavier so that they can get that bone density and tendon tolerance. And for those who just want to look awesome, I hope they appreciate that lifting heavy is actually the way to do that. Most people that look really good actually lift more than you would think. And then, of course, we did talk about for those people that get that propensity towards muscle, I hope you're proud of it. I hope society changes its outlook a little bit on why women can't have a little bit bigger deltoids or whatever. But in the meantime, if you do want to change that, it's all about that concurrent cardio to the best of my knowledge.